Welcome back, crew. It's January, so that means we are diving into Paizo's amazing Pathfinder 2e system. And today, we're diving into the meat of it. We're going to be going over some of the core mechanics of the system and showing you how to play the game. Now, if you're familiar with Pathfinder 2e, you know it can be a little dense, so rather than do a 30-minute video and bore you to tears, it'll probably take a little bit longer than 30 minutes at that. We're going to be breaking it up into chunks so you can get to see different functions of the system and kind of learn as you go. So, what we're doing the first chunk is we're going to be going over what the actions mean, skills, and how to apply them, and kind of how they interact with the system, as well as feats and how you gain them and how to pick them up. So we're going to be going through those as we go. But before we dive into that, one thing I want to shout out, as always with our games of the month, we hold a live actual play, and Pathfinders will be next coming Thursday, January 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So come through, join us on my Twitch channel, Tegan J Gaming. Links down in the description, and you get to see me and my crew play this amazing system. This isn't my first time playing it, like a lot of my other games of the month. But this is like kind of I've never really taken a deeper dive as I've taken this time for this system, and I'm really excited for it. And this will be my first time playing it after determining that this is going to be one of my new in rotation games. I think I mentioned before last video, but my game that was on my Frankenstein Monster 5e with a ton of homebrew and things cobbled onto it are now switching over to the Pathfinder system. So it's going to be a little bit of a mainstay for the channel and myself, guys. I go through and learn different things and make some new videos with it as well. So if you like Pathfinder 2e, stay tuned. You're definitely going to be hearing a little bit more about it. But you get to see me and my crew play it out January 26th. And as always, one of the cool things we do is we give away a PDF copy of the system to one lucky viewer that during that live play, because one of the big goals of this channel is to get more people in the space playing different tabletop RPGs and not just sticking with one. And one of the cool things about all the controversies that have been swirling around is I see a lot of people kind of breaking out of the 5e bubble and getting to try out some other systems. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. So, my small piece of that is the games of the month and giving away that PDF. So, if you're interested in the Pathfinder system and on a budget or just interested in general, come through, join us January 26th, 7 p.m. on my channel, T&J Gaming. But yeah, let's dive into it. So we're going to be going through some of the core stuff for the Pathfinder system. And I thought the best spot to start was with actions, the symbols, and how they work. Because one of the big differences, especially if you're coming from 5e, where 5e has defined actions, you've got your action, your bonus action, and movement, and then reaction. You've got those four each turn. Pathfinder 3, rather than kind of locking you into those options, gives you 3 actions you can take on your turn. Now you can use your action to sprint and move. You can use your action to attack. You can use your actions, or sometimes multiple actions, to cast a spell. But it gives you that choice. So if you wanted to spend all 3 of your actions dashing or moving, you could do so. Or if you wanted to spend all 3 of them attacking, you could do so. Though with attacking, you do have that multi-attack penalty, which a lot of times may not be your best choice, but you're able to do so if it makes sense in that moment, that's your strategy. So I think that's cool. If you've watched my channel, you'll know I love giving choice to players, and I think that's really one of the cool areas Pathfinder allows you to do so and gives more choice to the players as they're running their PC to interact with the world. So really cool there. But before we moved on, I wanted to give you a look at the different actions they are and the symbol next to them. Because if you have the Pathfinder 2e book and you flip through it, you're going to see the symbols a lot. And knowing what they mean will save you some time. And I like the way they have it set up too, because it's a pretty dense book, as you can see behind me. And having them with the symbols saves some text and makes it from getting even denser. So it's a cool way to do it. But if you see that little diamond with a little piece of it missing, that's a single action. If you see multiples of them, however many they are is how many actions it takes. So you get 3 in a turn. So if something takes your 3 actions, that's your whole turn on whatever you're doing. Usually something pretty potent at that point. Now, the little reversal symbol is a reaction. Those have very specific triggers to go off. So if that happens, usually if you pick out abilities, or like let's say you're a fighter and have attack of opportunity, really pay close attention to the triggers, because it can only be used if those triggers are satisfied. And that's true for any reaction ability that comes up. So just really, as you're picking them out and adding them to your character sheet, make sure you know those triggers and can bust them out right when they're needed. And then finally, you've got the diamond with a little black mark in the middle of it, that's going to be your free actions. So those are usually pretty few and far between. A lot of the things that may used to be a free action, other systems usually do have some type of action cost to them. So just kind of go through and pay attention, especially as you're reading the different actions you can do in combat and in the game, and see what's free and what's not, so you can have the best use of your action economy. So now that we've gone through the actions, we're going to go through and dive into the skills section of the Pathfinder 2e system. So one of the cool things with this system, and really one of the areas I think it shines, is how important skills are to the game. Skills allow you to do some pretty cool and crazy stuff. Like level 15 skill, to pick like one of the high end. If you have intimidation as one of your trade skills, you could literally scare somebody to death. Like just straight up kill them through just pure fear. And that's a pure martial character too. That's not a magic ability. That's just something you could do being trained in intimidation, legendary level obviously, but having that skill with intimidation, which I thought was really cool because one of the big things, one of my core complaints with the 5e was the skills didn't feel like they mattered as much, especially as magic came in and as you leveled and magic became more prevalent or more options for your magic. Skills felt like they sometimes took a back seat. That's not the case with Pathfinder 2e. Skills can do amazing things. And even with, and I'll kind of touch on magic a little bit here, even with magic, if you have a wizard or sorcerer in the party, magic isn't like the snap your fingers you're done piece. With 5e, if you spend like that resource, and let's say you're trying to get through a chest or a locked door, you can just cast knock. Takes a spell slot, but you're through it. Rogue is just sitting there holding his lockpicks without anything to do. Magic in this system, rather than solving the problem, it usually gives a bonus to whoever's going to help solve it. So the knock spell is in Pathfinder 2e, but it gives a circumstance bonus to the rogue to be able to go through and lockpick that door, which I think is cool because it encourages teamwork and allows people's archetype and build to shine, and not just shine because the wizard didn't want to spend their slot. So I'm really happy with that. It's really cool things to see, especially reading through the tables. There's a lot of fun feats and things you can pick with your skill feats to do like amazing, crazy stuff with your action economy. So really cool there. But before we move on to that, wanted to go over the five different levels of skill proficiency within the system. So with this system, you can start off as untrained. That means you've got no official training within the system. If you're rolling that, you're going to roll a d20 plus whatever attribute that skill is tied to. Now, one thing to note, and we're going to go through this a little bit more as we get to the table, there are certain skills within the system that you can't even attempt, or actions within the system you can't even attempt unless you're trained with the skill, which I think is another cool way to do it too. So we'll go through that, but just kind of keep that note. Some things you may not be able to do unless you're trained. Then you get the first level trained, which all of these levels after untrained, you're going to add a flat bonus plus your level. So for trained, you add 2. And if you were a level 4 PC, you'd add 4 to that equation. So it would be 2 plus 4 plus your attribute plus your d20 roll. So as you see, it can stack up pretty well. You could get some higher numbers, but it also kind of reflects as you kind of go through it. And I liked it because as you level up, you feel like you're actually increasing your skills. You're getting better. You're showing more, more proficiency in what you can do, which I think is really cool. Now, with that though, especially if you're doing pen and paper, it can be a little annoying because you're going to do a lot of erasing. But overall, if you're like me, you usually play on a virtual tabletop, it's sweet and helpful. So we've got that. So we got trained is +2. The other ones are same way. You'll add your level to it. But for expert, it's +4, master +6, legendary +8. And you have those master and legendary are gated behind level ups too. So to access master skills, you have to be at least level 7. To access legendary skills, you have to be at least level 15. Now you're wondering probably how you get skills. So skills, you can get them a number of different ways. You get a lot of them from your class. You get a few from your background sometimes. Sometimes you get some from your ancestry as well. And sometimes you can take a general feat and just pick a skill you need. But the biggest way you're going to get them after you have your character built is through skill increases. And skill increases your first one will be at level 3, and then every 2 levels after that. Now, with a skill increase, you can either choose to train a skill or bump an untrained skill up to trained, or if you already have a skill that's trained, you want to bump it up, you can bump it up to expert. And then once you hit level 7, you can bump that expert skill up to master, and that master skill up to legendary at level 15. So pretty cool there. Gives you some cool options, you get some great bonuses, and it kind of really shows your character progressing as they level up and adventure throughout the world. So now that we know kind of the score skills and the proficiencies and ranks, one of the big things is kind of determining how DCs will work here. Because I think a lot of you guys are probably like, oh yeah, you have some higher rolls on that side, so it'll be a little bit easier with the skill DCs. This system really has some good rules for game masters for adjudicating the DCs by level for the different tasks they're doing. You should be able to see that on the table here. But one of the really cool things with Pathfinder 2e is that it doesn't just like always a binary. There's 4 different types of outcomes you can have from a roll. Crit success, failure, crit failure. We'll go over how to do that with a little bit of an example. So let's say like you are trying to disarm somebody using athletics. Let's say that's a DC 20 check to do so. If you just hit that 20, you've had a success. And you're going to be not able to disarm them, but you're going to have a circumstantial bonus to try to disarm them again in the future. Now let's say you hit a 30, which is 10 plus that 20. As long as you're 10 plus or above, that's a critical success. And now for that disarming one, that means you just straight up disarm them, and now that you can take their weapon or do whatever you needed to with it. Now, with the system as well, there's failures. So if you failed that one, if it just, like, let's say you got a 19 on the 20. Failure on that side doesn't really have, you just weren't able to disarm them, weren't able to get any circumstantial bonus. Now, if you failed it by like less, so if you got a 10 or below, you got a crit failure. So that means you lose your balance, you're flat-footed to the start of your next turn, and flat-footed has a little bit of a penalty to your AC. So a lot of those checks are like that. So we use disarm as an example, but for anything that you do, you're going to have that crit success, regular success, failure, crit failure. Same thing with attacking. If you beat somebody's AC by 10, you crit. Like in that 20 and that 1 isn't a crit success or crit failure here. It's all about that 10 plus, 10 minus, which is really cool, especially for damage on those ones, because you can get some crazy damage as a fighter with those, or a martial class, just critting away. So keep that in mind as you're going through it, and especially with some of those small circumstantial bonuses. Especially if you're coming from 5e, you may think like +1 or +2, like for fainting or shoving somebody down or making them flat-footed. You think those +2s like don't really matter as much, but those can be crucial, not just to hitting, but getting you above that 10 plus threshold, so you can get that damage in. So keep those in mind, add them up, especially if you're a martial class. It could be good to get those going before you get your attack versus trying to just multi-attack and taking those penalties and just hoping the dice will be kind. So now that we've got that, one last thing I do want to touch on when it comes to determining the outcomes for skills is how it goes with a competitive skill roll or a contested check, we'll say. So let's say you're trying to disarm somebody, keep it on the same analogy. Rather than having a roll off, it's going to be a DC. So the DC is going to be determined by 10 plus the relevant stat. So for them fighting off this disarm, it would be 10 plus athletics. So that's how we got that 20. We'll say that guy has a 10 in athletics altogether, so he's got a 20 there. So that's one of the cool ways you do that. So it's not going to be a lot of rolling off against each other. It's going to be pretty static, which helps out for determining those +10s, -10s, and determining if it's going to be a success, failure, or whatever may come from it. So last piece we're going to touch on before we move on to how you get feats in the system is just kind of how it works when it comes to trained versus untrained skills. So with this system, there are a lot of things you can do. A lot of them can be done with untrained in the skill, but some actions have to be trained in, like we picked on disarm. To do that, you have to be trained in athletics. So there's this table on page 235. I highly recommend you take a look before you build your first PC, just to see what actions are gated behind the trained or untrained level. Because knowing this will allow you to be more fine-tuned, and you definitely don't want to miss out on any cool actions. Like when I was building Laro, and check out our PC build video before, I wanted to make sure you could be able to feint. So I guess feint is one of the ones you kind of act like you're making a move, and it's a contested or a deception check versus them, so you have to beat that DC, and if you beat it, you get a circumstance bonus to your next attack, which I thought was cool, kind of a cool way to do an action to really set yourself up for the future. So check that out. I think that's a really cool one. And you get these different things too. So different skill feats you can take as well within the skill system you're proficient in. So keep an eye out for those too, which kind of leads into our next section. Is how you work with feats in your system. So with this system, there's two that you get just kind of during your selection phases and kind of a little bit afterwards. You got your ancestry feats, so whatever race you are, if you're coming from 5e, if you're an elf, a halfling, orc, or whatever it may be, at first, 5th, ninth, 13th, and 17th level, you get to pick a feat from your ancestry and kind of really buff out just kind of how your ancestry has impacted you and cool things you get from that. So that's one of the ways you can get some feats, and some of those allow you to even pick different feats from either the skill feats or general feats or class feats too. After you got your ancestry feats, you get your class feat. Now, most of those, it kind of varies from class to class when you get those. Typically, you're going to get those at level 2. Some classes, like Fighter, get them at level 1. And then after that, it's usually every even level or every 2 levels afterwards. Take a look at your class because it does vary on that side. And then after that, you got your general feats. You get your general feats at level 3. And then every 2 levels after that. So it's pretty cool. With most of these, it's going to be 2 level intervals afterwards. And you're going to go through and pick what you want from those. And general feats are a little bit more open, so it allows you to pick different things that you could do. Like there's if you wanted more skills, you could go through and pick the skill training one too. So it just kind of gives you different things you can do and really kind of build out your PC. And then you got your skill feats. Skill feats are sweet. You get those at level 2, every 2 levels afterwards. Those are definitely ones to take a look at, especially if you really want to be great at some skill. With athletics, there are different things you can add in there, like high jump and impossible jumps or intimidation. Like I mentioned, that intimidation one level 15, you could scare somebody to death. You could pick that. That's one of the skill feats you could pick if you meet the prerequisites. So go through those, take a look, really do a good read before you build your first PC, because there's just so much cool stuff that comes up with those and different ways to flesh out your character and just really make them shine. So that was just a quick look at the skills section, the current actions, and how you get your feats. As I said, we're going to be breaking these into chunks. Keep an eye out. Over this weekend, we're going to be doing combat next and combat actions. So that'll be a big one. That'll be a little chunky guy. So stay tuned. If you're new to the channel, each month we do a different game. And Pathfinder is our current game of the month. So we wanted to go through and just break down how to play this system so you can try out, especially if you're new to the system, just get a little bit of understanding under your belt before you dive in with you and your table. But thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something from it and got something out of it. Definitely, if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe. We do this each month with a different tabletop RPG. And definitely join us January 26th for the live play. And hopefully you'll be one of the lucky ones and get to bring home a copy of this amazing system. But thanks for joining, and until next time.